with us. We will be with you in just a moment. On the fourth branch program, the only place for common sense. I hope you're here with me, because very soon you'll learn about things different from what you've been hearing. Don't go anywhere. We have a very special program for you today. You are on the fourth branch program, the place for common sense. I am MD, host of the fourth branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events, as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Stay with us. We will be right back. Hello, I'm glad you're here. If you join me for the first time, welcome. I hope you're having a good Friday. Interestingly enough, today is Good Friday, so hopefully you're having a fantastic day. Today we have an interesting program. It's not different from what we have been doing, but it's interesting because we're going to be looking at what we have been doing from a very different prism. We're going to continue to talk about the candidates, those candidates vying for the Oval Office, the Democrat candidates now fighting one another to get to the Oval Office. Every day we have been featuring a particular candidate. Today we will be featuring Eric Swalwell. Eric Swalwell is that gentleman you're looking at. We will be talking about him. We will be telling you exactly what he has in store for you. But we also will be talking about the report. You remember the report? The Barr report, the Mueller report, or the Barr report, I guess, whichever version you wish to use as your base for discussion, for conversation. Now, we are not going to talk about the Mueller report or the Barr report based on its content, because I'm certain that if you score the internet, you're going around on different network, you'll hear different argument. In fact, it's almost 500 pages, which means for the next few days, you're going to hear a lot about this report. So there is no point for me to try to do it here. What I will try to do, which is why here, this is the place for common sense, we're going to try to look at people reaction, different people depending on where they're at in life, where they're at in terms of support for a political party, and we're going to try to figure out why certain people behave a certain way, and is it good for us or is it not good for us, and what in general does the report mean for the United States of America. Good thing, bad thing, or it doesn't matter? Well, we'll go get into all that, and we'll look at it through the prism of, well, you guessed it, common sense. You are, after all, on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. We will first take a look at, we only have two topics to talk about today. We will first take a look at, well, we'll call it the Mueller report for lack of better expression. Although I mentioned we're not going to actually talk about the report itself. We'll touch on maybe some aspect if it helps us drive the conversation, but we are not going to dwell on the report. In fact, we can not possibly debate the Mueller report in a few minutes conversation. But this is what we're going to approach first. And of course, the second aspect is what I mentioned earlier. We're going to talk about the candidate that we're going to feature today, which is Eric Swalwell. Now, we have been, in fact, before the Mueller's report was out, we already provided what I would call not a roadmap, but something that predetermined where we stood in terms of the outcome, whichever that outcome would be. On March 19, we wrote an article on which we published on the People Branch website called a title, "Why Congress Must Impeach Trump Regardless the Political Cost." Now, I wrote that article a few days before Mueller released the report to the Department of Justice to Barr. I wrote that article, and I will read just a couple of paragraphs from that article. But if you want the full version of the article, you can find it on the peoplebranch.org website. This is where we publish most of our publication. We do have other places we publish as well, but all of our publication, regardless of where we publish our articles, we will more likely either link it there or publish it there as well. So if you want the full version of the article, you can go to the peoplebranch.org and you can read the full article there. Now, here's what I say on the article. I started this way: Donald Trump must be impeached to save the Republic. Not to impeach Trump is unpatriotic, unconstitutional even. Now, keep in mind, the Mueller report was not out just yet. Now, to give you just a background, I have been writing about Donald Trump even before Donald Trump made the announcement for the presidency of the United States. I have been following Donald Trump for quite some time. Now, for those people, which I have heard from, who call me a damn liberal, who doesn't know what he's talking about, etc., etc., I made the point before and I'll make it again. I am probably the first or the only one who actually supported the candidacy of Donald Trump at a time that even the people today who who don't seem to want to leave Donald Trump no matter what he does, those people weren't even on board yet. In fact, those people were staying away from Donald Trump at that time. That was a time when Donald Trump candidacy was seen as a joke, just to give you an idea. So the idea that some people say, oh, this guy is a joke, he doesn't know what he's talking about, we have a great president, so on and so forth. Well, it so happened that I do know what I'm talking about. That's number one. And number two, I do have a great deal of common sense to know exactly at which point that you support an individual and at which point you drop that support when that individual is no longer doing what's right by the country. Because I'm more about the country than I'm about a political party. To me, the United States of America is what comes first. Now, if an individual does something or is doing something that's not appropriate, that's not right, as a matter of fact, I would say that I take that from paraphrasing here from Abraham Lincoln, because Abraham Lincoln said that he will stand with an individual as long as you are right, but if you're going the wrong way, he will no longer be with you. And that's my principle. That's the way I go. George Washington say it is far better to be alone than to be in bad company. So yes, my common sense, this ability to be able to see that it is more important to preserve the integrity of a nation than to be loyal to a man. Yes, I have that great deal of common sense. So for those who are making those comments, they're not even I would say it's because they don't know what they're talking about, because if they did, they would have known that I was well ahead of the curve. I was way ahead of them even before they now unable to break away from something that's ruining the country, that's ruining their lives. So now let's take a quick pause and think about exactly what we're looking at. We have a report that was released, produced by a special counsel, right? Now, again, as I mentioned, before the report was released, I have already concluded, because I've been writing enough about this particular, about Donald Trump in particular, but the actual investigation, that it was natural for me to see where this whole thing was going, and to understand that as a patriot, you know, a patriot, if someone say I'm a patriot, because I've heard the word being tossed around as if it's just a word. Just because you are an American citizen doesn't make you a patriot. This is not, patriot is not synonymous to citizen. You can be an American citizen, it doesn't make one a patriot. A patriot is someone who would sacrifice his or her own life to protect the country. Now, think about that. If that requires sometimes that you even sacrifice your life for the sake of the country, how much more should you sacrifice your political party? How much more should you sacrifice loyalty to a man for your country? So if you cannot do that, no matter what you think of yourself, you're not a patriot. That much I can tell you. You can dance on your head and pretend that you love the country. This is baloney. You just, I guess you're deceiving yourself, because I don't think you can deceive other people. Being a patriot requires that you make some sacrifice. And one of the sacrifices that patriot would do for patriots would do for their country is sometimes to lay their lives in order to keep whatever we have, whatever we cherish, which is our democracy. And if you find yourself arguing, debating, explaining why you take a position that's bad for the country, you can write that in huge letter in your home, in your wall, that you are not a patriot. You an American citizen. That's all. Now, I said all that is because a conversation with a lot of my fellow Republicans, there seems to be a misunderstanding between being an American and being a patriot. You are an American citizen, which means you can vote, you can raise your voice, you can protest, you can do all that, but that still does not make one a patriot. Now, the report was released by Mueller, taken by the Department of Justice, at that time William Barr. Now, you all know the story that William Barr auditioned for the job of Attorney General. In fact, he did two things that very deceiving. One, he went for his confirmation hearing, he pretended that he would go there and he would be the Attorney General for the country and it would be transparent. Those are not my words, those are his words during the confirmation hearing. That he said in fact, a lot of people gave him a lot of credit. People who actually knew him before, people who worked for him, say that, well, yes, he did write a 19-page letter saying a lot of things, but they trusted that once he was he was confirmed as Attorney General, then he will do what a citizen of who is in that post would do. Now, if you're a supporter of Donald Trump, which, by the way, if you're a supporter and a civilian, That's one thing that I have a high degree of tolerance for. People who don't know what's good for them. And I can tell you, millions of those individuals who continue to support Donald Trump, they don't know what's good for them. And I don't say that lightly. I say that is because, well, maybe I should say something else in either they don't know what's good for them, or they don't even understand what they're doing. Maybe perfect timing to use that language. And the reason I say that is because it is very rare to find that someone is being harmed and yet continue to go and offer himself or herself for more harm. That doesn't make logical sense, but that's in a sense what we're observing in the United States for the past 2 years. Hold that thought. Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the people. Throughout history, dictators, authoritarians have always tried to delegitimize the media in order to get away with corruption, scandal, and yes, even abuses. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933, accusing the media of fabrication. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our only business, is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent. It is necessary. It is critical. Our very freedom depends on it. Now let's take a look at what really that means. No matter how naive an individual is, if you are a patriot, it has to be a concern that the individual who sit in the Oval Office is somewhat embroiled in some sort of tense relationship with a foreign entity, especially Russia. Now, the conversation you've been hearing that's been going on since that report has been released, you have Republicans. Now, I started saying earlier that I have a high level of tolerance for individual civilians who gone astray, who made the wrong choice and the wrong decision. But my tolerance level for legislators who do that is very low. Because the reason that those individuals are legislators is because we trust them to make right, correct decision. Now, you may not care about what is going on in terms of this particular predicament we're in, but let me give you a point of reference. In 1998, the Republican-led House engaged in an impeachment proceeding against Bill Clinton. Now, a number of those same Republicans that are today trying to defend the action, the egregious action of Donald Trump, those were the very people like Lindsey Graham. He was there. He was adamant that he would not lose any sleep trying to impeach Clinton. Now, I don't know how old you are. If you may have heard of the Clinton impeachment, but the spectacle at that time about Republicans wanting by any means necessary to impeach Clinton was high-pitched fever. And in case you're not aware, it was because Mr. Clinton had an affair with an intern, Monica Lewinsky. And during a conversation, I guess, with the special counsel, he lied. So he was the impeachment procedure began in order to punish him for lying and obstruction of justice. Now, what I just told you, that's the story. He had an affair with an intern, and during investigation, he didn't tell the truth, and this is the impeachment. Now, keep that on one side, what you just heard, and compare that to what the country is going through now. The scandal, the criticality, the severity of what the current president of the United States has gone through, and the kind of maneuver he had made to prevent the investigation, to derail the investigation, and even to refuse to speak with the special counsel. Now, compare those two and tell me which one the country owes to really take an action against that individual. Republicans didn't have any problem whatsoever going after Bill Clinton for having an affair. Now we have a president who collaborated, keep saying no collusion. In fact, that's a term, me personally, in my article, that I, even before Robert Mueller released the report, and clearly say the term is not even used in his report. He used collaboration between the Donald Trump team and Russian, and that's the term I've been using all along, because the term collusion is not recognized in the DOJ circle. Now, there is no doubt the report gives you tons of information that clearly show you that there were many different collaboration between Trump team and Trump Russia. There is no doubt about it. Now you can call no collusion all you want, but the facts are the facts. Second, during the whole investigation, if you think Clinton lied was enough for him to be impeached, have you taken a look at Donald Trump? Every single individual in his camp, not just Donald Trump, everybody, the press secretary, every single individual. It's almost like a house of lies. That's all you have in the Trump camp. Now, I say all that not because I'm here. I'm not even here to make the comparison, but I wanted to bring that forth so that I can make a more important point. If you compare those two, Bill Clinton was a saint, and yet Republicans saw that it should be impeached. But today we have an individual who have collaborated with a foreign enemy, who put the national security of the country in danger, who reveal secret to our enemies, and yet we're still talking about, there is nothing there. Now the report clearly say, that's Robert Mueller's conclusion, that it cannot exonerate Trump. Contrary to what Barr said, pretending that that was the case, but the report clearly, and we haven't even seen the underlying document that get Mueller to make that determination. Cannot exonerate Trump. But that's not even where I'm at. People who have supported Trump, who couldn't care less about the country, they've been supporting him despite all that he has been doing. And people are thinking that if Mueller were to come and say Trump is to be indicted, that still would not have made any difference, because those people who continue to support Trump, they don't care about the United States of America. They're American, but they're not patriot. As far as they are concerned, it just doesn't matter. The country was there before because the Civil War happened because there were also as many people who wanted to be on the wrong side of history. The country has always had that kind of problem. In fact, what troubled me, as I mentioned, is the fact that we have legislators, people who know better, because that's the reason you would call those people leaders, because they would have a little bit of common sense to guide people in the right direction. Nope. They have been guiding people in the wrong direction. They've been lying about it. They've been lying for Trump, and they've been lying to the country. We have tapes of Devin Nunes plotting to put an end to the investigation. I keep saying that I'll bring that up, but I definitely will bring that up next week. Yes, that way before we get to where we are today, because they are well aware of what Trump had done. So their strategy was not to do the legislative duty, but rather to help Trump put an end to the investigation. Now, while you may think it's okay because they're Republican and they're trying to support Republican, now Bill Clinton did have a lot of Democrats that supported him. But one thing, no matter how much you hear Republicans talking about being patriot, Democrats at least have the sense, the decency, when something is wrong, to say, you know what, that guy deserves to be punished. And they did take that stand. In fact, a lot of people did take that stand. Some left the administration because they say, you know what, I don't want to be to associate with someone who is doing that. And that was personal affair. We're talking about cheating. And yet some people would not want to associate Democrat, the people that Republicans like to call liberal, as if they don't know anything better, they do not have any decency. And yet we're watching for we're going to third year watching Republican legislators in Washington cooperating with Donald Trump, shielding Donald Trump, lying for Donald Trump, all the while bringing our institution down, trampling our rule of law, and trashing the Constitution. So talking about legislators, now why is that important? Why should you care? Because if you support Donald Trump, you don't care what Republican legislators do. Because as far as you're concerned, you're happy that they're helping you supporting Donald Trump. The United States of America has been going down in standing on the world stage, but hey, that's not your problem either. Why should you care? Now here's the question I have for civilians supporting Donald Trump, but most importantly for legislators such as Jim Jordan, Mark Meadows, Lindsey Graham, all those people lying for Trump, supporting Trump. Here's the question I have. And every time I think about it, it really irritates me that we have people who took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Donald Trump took that oath, the legislators took that oath, and yet they all doing just the opposite of the oath they took. Let me ask this question. Does anyone think all those things that Donald Trump did, it did for the United States? Does anyone think so? All those back channel, all those collaborating with Russian in the back end, all those things, do you think Donald Trump did that for the United States of America? Now, if the people were the people supporting Donald Trump are naive enough to believe that, but legislators, it's in black and white. It's obvious to anyone, even to a blind man, that all those things that Donald Trump did were not for the benefit of the United States. And yet we're willing to shield him, to continue to the erosion of our democracy. That's the kind of thing that boggles the mind. Because no matter how stupid anyone is, you cannot possibly think that Donald Trump is doing all those things for the benefit of the United States. And we know he's not. His personal attorney told us exactly what he was doing. Now, someone who is only concerned about himself, using the country, the Oval Office, to pursue his personal agenda, and yet there is not a single Republican legislator who is willing to say, you know what, enough is enough. We cannot accept that an individual destroy our nation. Instead, what do? They support him. They defend him. They lie for him. Let me read another paragraph on that article that I wrote on March 19, a few days or weeks before Robert Mueller released the report. Let's take a look at that paragraph. I'll read it for you. Not to impeach Trump would be the greatest affront to our country, to the world, to society. Donald Trump is the perfect sample of what a human being should not be. A sample most parents, logical parents that is, would dread their children to be. Mr. Trump is the individual parents would point to as what not to become. Yet, millions of people who can identify with him voted him in office, continue to support him, and even defend his action. But, no president can be impeached for being despicable. But we, the rest of the country, can lament, but the Constitution offers no remedy for this problem. Fortunately, the country does not have to accept the vicious individual that he is. Mr. Trump has provided to the legislative body, that's Congress and the Senate, streaks of corruption and violation, even violation of the oath of office he took. A violation of the oath of office is more than sufficient to impeach any president.
After reading several books based on presidents and on Obama specifically, I found that they're typically partisan. The Obama legacy targets the heart of the issue by giving credit to the president where it's due, but definitely coming down hard on Obama on his bigger failures, like his handling of the Syrian crisis.
If you are in college, going to college, you are an educator, a faculty member, or someone with interest in government or politics, The Obama Legacy is definitely a book to read.
My professor recommended The Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use or leisure reading.
I would recommend this book to anyone out there searching for an impartial and unbiased look into Barack Obama's tenure as president.
I would definitely recommend this book as a good read for both liberals and conservatives.
Who is Eric Swalwell? As I mentioned earlier, the second topic that we will talk about is, of course, the road to 2020. And each day we feature a particular candidate and tell you exactly what this candidate is about, and you can decide whether that candidate is the one that you would want to represent you in 2020. Who is Eric Swalwell? Well, Eric Swalwell is currently the U.S. representative for the 15th district in California, rather. And he has been in this particular position since January of 2013. As a matter of fact, I think there was just during the 2018 midterm he had to defend his seat, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Mr. Swalwell was born in November of 1980, which means he's pretty much 38, 39 years old. He was born in Sac City, Iowa. Well, lucky for him, this is where the first where they begin testing the ground to see how well they can possibly do, and this is where we expect a few of the candidates would decide whether going forward is for them or not. Now, Eric Swalwell happened to, come from Iowa. Let's see. We'll watch very closely to see how he does in his home turf. He is married to Brittany Watts in 2016. They already have 2 children. Now, Eric has studied at Campbell University of Maryland. That's which is in College Park. This is where he got a Bachelor of Arts. Now he continued his study at same university where he got a Juris Doctor. One thing that I do notice that a lot of the candidates, Democrat candidate, usually have a doctorate, a Juris Doctor degree coupled with whatever else they study. Quite an interesting observation, but quite a few of them seems to have that added to their resume. Now, Eric Swalwell is not a household name, obviously, and it actually took him some time to jump in. I'm not sure why, but he spent. It's not too long ago that he decided to jump into the race. He's talked about that. He's hinted about that, but for whatever reason, he's been sitting on the side and not say anything. Just coincidentally, today, CNN. Actually, NBC did make the announcement that Joe Biden, who's been very silent about what he intends to do, will be making an announcement next week, more precisely on Wednesday, and later in the day before we actually come here, CNN confirmed that indeed the case. Now back to Eric Swalwell. Now, what is the underlying fact? What is the highlight about Eric Swalwell that would make him the individual for you to consider? Well, at the University of Maryland, Swalwell served as Vice President of Campus Affairs for the Student Government Association, and he was later elected members of the Student Faculty Staff University Senate and the Executive Committee. He was a very active member of the Alpha Sigma Phi fraternity. He served as the student liaison to the City Council of College Park. Now, he entered politics, you would say probably around 2001, 2002. That's when he actually interned for a representative by the name of Ellen Tosher in United States House of Representatives. And later on, he became the representative for the California 10th Congressional District. Now, what is his big idea? Why would you consider Eric Swalwell as an individual to vote for or an individual to look forward to support to become the next president of the United States? What does he offer? Now, as I mentioned, Eric Swalwell is not a household name. He's is not a baby in politics, but is not well known in I guess in the public arena. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Is not really someone that you know much about. But regardless, his big idea, what is it? Eric thinks that if he embrace the gun, going after the lack of gun restriction, that's his big idea. That's the I guess that's the issue he wants to run on. As I pointed out, talking about other candidates, each one of them has what we call a big idea, which is what they're gonna use on the campaign trail in order to excite people, in order to rally people, and get their support. Eric Swalwell consider that running on gun restriction would definitely do the job. Now, would it? It is no surprise here in the United States of America that gun tragedies are a big problem in the country. Every time you blink, there is some sort of shootout, some massacre being perpetrated in the country. And we have our share of that problem. In fact, since Columbine, if you remember, just a couple of days ago, there was a woman out of Florida, 18 years old. Just 18 years old. Left Florida, traveled all the way to Colorado, and he was so infatuated with the massacre, Columbine massacre, then she decided to go there, I guess, for a repeat. Fortunately, authorities were alerted, and we're not sure how she died, but the last piece of information was that she was killed. Now, whether it was self-inflicted or was killed by law enforcement, we're not sure, because that piece of information we do not have that piece of information. So yes, gun tragedies in the United States is causing a lot of problem. And yet, just like any other problem we have in this country, legislators in this particular case, once again, Republican legislators do not want to take on this issue in order to save the lives of our young generation. So they rather side with the gun manufacturer, they rather side with NRA, even if that costs the lives of all of our children. Every time a tragedy happens, from Columbine to today, you can almost rest assured Republican will come in front of you and will offer thoughts and prayer. That's all they will do. They offer thoughts and prayer. In New Zealand, by contrast, when a gunman went and gunned down 50 people, swift action were taken within a month. Within just 1 month. Both the Parliament and the President of New Zealand signed into law a ban for assault weapon. Just 1 month. Here in the United States, the blood of our children have been flowing throughout the corridors of all schools, high school, elementary school, and the Republican answer to that, our thought and prayers are with you. Now, Eric Swalwell wants to take on the gun industry. Now, while it is a noble position to take, nobody can argue against that, but I still don't see the excitement behind using that as a rallying theme. Then again, that's probably why I'm not a candidate. I'm just saying, as promised, we are not going to debate the actual candidate. We simply giving our thought about the particular big idea that each candidate has embraced. So we will be keeping an eye on Eric, especially in Iowa, to see how he's going to frame this big idea and whether that can help him advance. Now, we don't know if he's going to participate in the June debate taking place in Florida, because there are conditions that the Democrat Party set for any candidate to participate in the debate, mainly to raise a certain amount of money. So Eric Swalwell, if he's able to do that, he will be able to participate. So would Joe Biden, because Joe Biden will be announcing his candidacy next week. Will he have enough time to raise enough money to participate? We don't know. So we're watching those candidates very closely, and of course, we will see how many of those candidates will survive after the debate. But most importantly, we have our eyes on Iowa. This is where a lot of things will happen. After Iowa, a lot of candidates may simply drop out. So keep an eye on this broadcast, because we are keeping an eye out on those candidates and let you know exactly what they're doing, what they stand for, what their credentials are. This way you can decide who is the best person to represent you. Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question? Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the people. Throughout history, dictators, authoritarians have always tried to they legitimize the media in order to get away with corruption, scandal, and yes, even abuse. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933, accusing the media of fabrication. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our business, our only business, is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent. It is necessary. It is critical. Our very freedom depends on it. It is very easy, too easy for anyone to convince himself or herself that he is doing the right thing because his feeling is what matters. His agenda is what matters and nobody else. There was a time when citizens in the country used to consider loyalty to the country as the most important than loyalty to a party or loyalty to an individual. In fact, George Washington, our first president, set the example for us. He did not belong to any political party, and it was not by accident. It was a very conscious decision that George Washington made. And today we can see why. Defending a political party at all costs, including to the detriment of the country. Defending a political party at all costs, including to the detriment of the country. Blind individuals and even our legislators, whom we believe, or we elected rather, to do right by the people, to do right by the country, to do right by the Constitution. Yes, you may want to call it politics because it fits you, it fits your agenda, but it is not politics. As I have always pointed out here on the Fourth Branch, there is only one United States of America. And there is not a single man on the face of this planet, let alone in the United States, who deserve to be considered above the loyalty for our country. No, Donald Trump does not qualify. And whenever you find yourself showing more loyalty to a man than to your own country, you don't have to question other people's patriotism because you are by definition not a patriot. Now, this is not a matter of Democrat versus Republican. It is one thing to argue budget, to argue policies, but it is a very different thing to side with an individual who not only has proven beyond a shred of a doubt that he doesn't care an iota about the country, but everything that he does is for his own benefit, that should have been a very easy exercise for everyone in this nation to make certain that we rid our government of such individual. But I know, despite my anger, my frustration, I know why Republican would not make that happen. During the 2 years that Donald Trump has been in the Oval Office, he has already met Vladimir Putin 5 times without anyone in the country knowledge of what he discussed with Vladimir Putin. As if that's not enough affront to our country, 2 Republican delegations went to Moscow without any Democrat involved. And as of date, the country does not know what they talked about either. So we know why the Republican legislators, why they side with Donald Trump. We know why they not loyal to the United States of America. And unfortunately, the people, the framers of the Constitution, relied on as the last resort to prevent our democracy from being eroded further. Now those same individuals also have already gone the way of damaging our democracy. So what is the remedy for our nation? Because as far as Republicans are concerned, we know they do not care what happened to the country. They do not care what happened to the nation. And this is not a darn liberal just saying that. It's proven for the past 2 years that's what Republican legislators, that's their choices. That's what they choose to do. So we're not expecting Republican legislators to suddenly see the light and understand that it is more important to be loyal to the United States of America than to a political party, than to a man. So we know we have a serious problem in the country because the whole Republican Party from top to bottom are not with the United States of America. So it becomes the responsibility of the Democrats and the Independent to redeem our nation from where it has fallen. We know they can do it. We were in a predicament that was probably worse before. In 1861, we had a Senator, Jeff Davis, who decided to join the Confederate state and fought against the Union. He decided to be on the wrong side of history. He wasn't alone. There were many like him. So today, we're seeing a repeat of the 1861. No, not this time, not to free the slave, but to free our nations of ignorance, to free our nation of an individual who is determined to destroy everything we have cherished. We have to save those individuals from themselves the same way Abraham Lincoln saved those who fought in the Confederate side from themselves. It is another dark moment in the history of our country, that a whole political party from top to bottom decided to be on the wrong side of history. If you have any question, suggestion, comment, criticism, please do not hesitate to contact us. Should you have a topic you would like us to talk about, we'd like to hear from you. We will research it, we will debate it right here on the Fourth Branch, the place for common sense. I hope you have a wonderful Friday. See you next time. The Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.
kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who make love undercover. I'm just the kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who could watch me keel over. Tide is high, but I wanna